What happens when one of Hollywood's toughest actors completely loses control during a live television interview? Well, you're about to find out because Tom Hardy just had an explosive meltdown on The View that left everyone in the studio absolutely stunned. This isn't your typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a full-blown eruption that had security rushing to the set and producers scrambling to cut to commercial. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really triggered Hardy's outburst. Trust me, you won't believe how this all started. It was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance. Tom Hardy was scheduled for a standard 10-minute segment on The View to discuss his latest film project, nothing more than the usual Hollywood publicity circuit that actors navigate dozens of times throughout their careers. The atmosphere in the studio that morning seemed perfectly normal, with the production crew going through their standard pre-show checklist, while the hosts reviewed their notes and prepared for what they assumed would be another pleasant celebrity chat. Joy Behar, known for her sharp wit and ability to ask probing questions, had done her homework on Hardy's career and recent projects. She'd prepared what she considered to be thoughtful questions about his acting process, his upcoming roles, and his thoughts on the current state of the film industry. What she hadn't prepared for was the version of Tom Hardy who walked onto that set that day. From the moment Hardy entered the studio, something felt off. Makeup artists and production assistants who had worked with countless celebrities over the years later described an unusual tension radiating from the actor. He wasn't engaging in the typical small talk that guests usually share with crew members, and his responses to basic questions about comfort and preparation were clipped and dismissive. "Tom, welcome to The View," Joy Behar said with her characteristic warm smile as the cameras began rolling. "We're so excited to have you here today to talk about your new film." Hardy's response was immediate and surprising. "Are we really going to pretend this is about the film, Joy? Because I've seen your show, and I know exactly what this is about." The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly caught off guard by Hardy's confrontational tone right from the opening moment. Behar, however, maintained her composure and tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Well, of course we want to hear about your new project," she replied. "But our viewers are always interested in getting to know the person behind the performances. That's what makes for engaging television." "Engaging television?" Hardy repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "Is that what you call it when you ambush guests with personal questions they never agreed to discuss? When you dig into their private lives for ratings?" End of quote. Quote. Behar's expression shifted slightly, but she remained professional. "Tom, I'm not sure what you're referring to. We haven't asked you any personal questions yet. We literally just welcomed you to the show." "Don't play dumb with me," Hardy shot back, leaning forward in his chair with an intensity that made the studio audience visibly uncomfortable. "I know you've been researching my personal life, my relationships, my family. That's not what I'm here for, and I won't sit here and be your entertainment." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Camera operators adjusted their positions, sensing that this interview was taking an unexpected turn. The other View hosts, Whoopi Goldberg among them, looked uncertain about whether to jump in or let Behar handle the increasingly volatile situation. "Tom, I genuinely don't know what research you're talking about," Behar said, her voice remaining steady despite the growing awkwardness. "Our producers sent your publicist a standard list of topics we might cover. Nothing unusual, nothing invasive. Just the kind of conversation we have with all our guests." Hardy's laugh was harsh and bitter. "Standard topics? Right. Tell me, Joy. What's standard about asking an actor about his rehab stint from 15 years ago? What's standard about bringing up custody battles that were sealed by the court?" Behar looked genuinely confused now, and she glanced toward the producers off camera before responding. "Tom, those topics aren't on our list. I don't know where you're getting this information, but we had no intention of discussing anything like that." "Liar," Hardy said flatly, his voice cutting through the studio like a knife. "You people are all the same. You smile and pretend to be supportive, but all you want is dirt. All you want is drama. Well, congratulations, Joy. You're getting your drama today." The atmosphere had shifted completely now. What started as a standard morning show interview had become something entirely different. The studio audience, initially excited to see a major movie star, now sat in uncomfortable silence, witnessing what appeared to be a complete breakdown happening in real time. Behar took a deep breath, clearly trying to salvage the situation. "Tom, I think there might be some miscommunication here. Why don't we take a step back and talk about what you actually came here to discuss? Tell us about your new film, the character you're playing, what drew you to the project." But Hardy wasn't interested in stepping back. If anything, Behar's attempt to redirect seemed to fuel his anger even more. Miscommunication? That's rich coming from someone who's built her entire career on miscommunications that somehow always end up making her guests look bad. "That's not fair, Tom," Behar replied, her own composure beginning to show cracks. "I've been doing this job for decades, and I've always treated my guests with respect. I don't know what's gotten into you today, but this hostility is completely uncalled for." Hardy stood up abruptly from his chair, causing a stir among the production crew. "Uncalled for? You want to know what's uncalled for? Inviting someone onto your show under false pretenses, lying about your intentions, using people's vulnerabilities for cheap television." "Sit down, Tom," Behar said firmly, her patience finally beginning to wear thin. "You're making a scene over absolutely nothing. We invited you here in good faith to promote your work, and you're turning it into some kind of conspiracy theory." "Good faith?" Hardy's voice rose significantly, echoing through the studio. "There's nothing good about what you do here, Joy. You tear people down for entertainment. You exploit personal struggles for ratings. You're everything that's wrong with this industry, and I'm sick of pretending otherwise." The other hosts were clearly struggling with whether to intervene. This had gone far beyond the typical celebrity interview hiccup, and was venturing into territory that none of them had experience navigating. The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this confrontation unfold with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. Behar's response marked a turning point in the exchange. Her professional demeanor finally cracked, and her own frustration became evident. "You know what, Tom? I've had enough of this. You came on my show, you're acting like a complete lunatic, and you're accusing me of things I never did. Either sit down and have a normal conversation, or get off my set." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone in the studio sensed that Hardy's response would determine where this confrontation went next. Hardy's eyes flashed with something dangerous at Behar's ultimatum. Instead of backing down or walking away, he took a step closer to the interview table, his imposing physical presence suddenly feeling much more threatening in the intimate studio setting. "Get off your set?" Hardy's voice was low and menacing now, a stark contrast to his earlier shouting. "This isn't your set, Joy. This is a platform that you've been given, and you've abused it for years. Someone needs to call you out on your behavior, and apparently that someone is me." Whoopi Goldberg finally decided to intervene, her voice cutting through the tension. "Tom, I think we all need to take a breath here. Whatever issues you think you have with Joy, this isn't the way to handle them. You're on live television, there are people in our audience, and you're being incredibly disrespectful." Hardy turned his attention to Goldberg, and his expression grew even more contemptuous. "Disrespectful? You want to talk about disrespect, Whoopi? How about the disrespect you show to your guests every single day? How about the way you gang up on people who don't share your opinions? How about the way you use this platform to push your agenda while pretending to be objective?" "That's completely out of line," Goldberg responded firmly. "We have guests from all different backgrounds and viewpoints on this show. We treat everyone fairly, and we certainly don't deserve to be attacked by someone who's clearly having some kind of breakdown." The word breakdown seemed to trigger something even deeper in Hardy. His face contorted with rage, and he slammed his hand down on the interview table with such force that the coffee mugs and water glasses jumped, spilling their contents across the surface. "Breakdown?" he roared. "You think this is a breakdown? This is me finally telling the truth about what you people really are. You're parasites, feeding off other people's pain and calling it entertainment." Behar had recovered from her initial shock and was now matching Hardy's intensity. "You know what, Tom? I've interviewed thousands of people over my career, and I've never encountered someone as rude, as unprofessional, and as completely unhinged as you're being right now. Whatever personal demons you're dealing with, don't bring them onto my show." "Personal demons?" Hardy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My personal demons are my business, Joy. But your professional demons, those are everyone's business. The way you twist people's words, the way you take things out of context, the way you destroy reputations for sport. Another host, Sarah Haynes, tried to de-escalate the situation. Tom, I think there might be some confusion here. Maybe we could start over, take a different approach to this conversation. Hardy whipped around to face her, his movements sharp and aggressive. Start over? There's no starting over from this, Sarah. This is who I really am. And this is who all of you really are. The masks are off now. The only mask that's off is yours, Behar shot back. And what's underneath is pretty ugly. You're showing your true colors, and they're not very attractive. At least I have true colors, Hardy retorted. At least I'm not hiding behind some fake television personality, pretending to care about people while I'm actually exploiting them. The studio audience was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Some people were looking toward the exits, others were pulling out their phones to record what was happening, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in daytime television history. Behar stood up from her chair now, matching Hardy's aggressive posture. You want to talk about exploitation, Tom? What about the way you're exploiting this platform right now? What about the way you're using our show to have some kind of public meltdown? You think you're making some grand statement, but all you're doing is embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? Hardy's voice reached a new level of intensity. The only thing embarrassing here is the fact that you people have been getting away with your behavior for so long. Someone should have called you out years ago. Called us out for what exactly? Goldberg interjected. For doing our jobs? For asking questions? For having conversations with our guests? What exactly is your problem with what we do here? Hardy's response was swift and vicious. Your problem is that you think you're journalists. But you're not. You're gossips. You're tabloid hosts masquerading as legitimate television personalities. You destroy people's lives and call it news. The accusation clearly stung, and Behar's response was immediate and fierce. That is absolutely not true, and you know it. We've done important interviews, we've covered serious topics, we've given platforms to people who needed to be heard. Just because you're having some kind of crisis doesn't give you the right to attack our integrity. Integrity? Hardy practically spat the word. You wouldn't know integrity if it hit you in the face. You've made your career by being controversial, by stirring up drama, by making people uncomfortable. Well, congratulations, Joy, because you've finally met someone who's not going to play your game. The tension in the studio was reaching a breaking point. Production assistants were hovering near the cameras, clearly receiving instructions from producers about whether to cut the feed. Security personnel had moved closer to the set, though they seemed unsure about when or if they should intervene. Behar's next words would prove to be the final straw. You know what, Tom? I've heard enough. You came onto our show acting like a complete maniac. You've insulted me and my colleagues, and you've disrupted our entire program. I don't know what your problem is, but it's not our responsibility to deal with your issues. Hardy's face went completely red, and for a moment, it seemed like he might actually become physically aggressive. Instead, he channeled all his rage into his voice, which became louder and more threatening than anyone in the studio had ever heard. My issues? He screamed. My issues are with people like you who think you can hide behind your platforms and destroy people without consequences. Well, guess what, Joy? Today there are consequences. Today someone is finally fighting back. Fighting back against what? Behar screamed right back at him. Against basic professional standards? Against common courtesy? Against normal human decency? Because that's all you're fighting against right now. The other hosts were looking desperately toward the producers, clearly wanting someone to intervene before this confrontation escalated any further. The studio audience was completely silent now, some people covering their children's ears as the shouting match continued. Hardy took another step toward the interview table, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the seated hosts. You want to know what I'm fighting against? I'm fighting against the lie that you people tell yourselves every single day. The lie that you're somehow making the world better when all you're doing is making it worse. Goldberg made one final attempt to restore some semblance of order. Tom, you need to calm down right now. This has gone way too far, and you're acting in a way that's completely inappropriate for television, for our audience, and for basic human interaction. But Hardy was beyond reasoning with now. His next words would push the confrontation into territory that no one in the studio was prepared for, setting up the explosive finale that would make this interview legendary for all the wrong reasons. Hardy's response to Goldberg was delivered with a cold, calculated malice that sent chills through everyone present. Inappropriate for television? Whoopee. Everything about this show is inappropriate. The way you ambush guests, the way you manipulate conversations, the way you profit from human misery. I'm just giving you a taste of your own medicine. That's it, Behar declared, standing up and pointing directly at Hardy. Security, get him out of here. I'm done with this lunatic and his conspiracy theories. He's clearly having some kind of mental health crisis, and we're not equipped to deal with it. The mention of mental health seemed to flip a final switch in Hardy's already volatile state. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow felt more threatening than all his previous shouting. Mental health crisis? You think this is a mental health crisis, Joy? Let me tell you what a real crisis looks like. Hardy began moving around the set with an erratic energy that made everyone nervous. A real crisis is when someone like you destroys a person's reputation with lies and half-truths. A real crisis is when families get torn apart because of the garbage that gets spread on shows like this. A real crisis is when careers get ruined because hosts like you decide to play judge and jury. Tom, you need to leave right now, Sarah Haynes said firmly, though her voice was shaking. You're scaring people, you're being completely unreasonable, and this has nothing to do with anything we've actually done. Hardy whirled on her with startling speed. Nothing to do with what you've done? Sarah, you sit there every day nodding along while Joy tears people apart. You're complicit in everything that happens on this show. You all are. Security personnel were now moving onto the set, but Hardy seemed oblivious to their presence. He was completely consumed by his rage, gesticulating wildly as he continued his rant. You want to know what's really inappropriate? Hardy continued, his voice rising again. What's inappropriate is giving people like you a platform to spread poison every single day. What's inappropriate is calling yourselves journalists when you're nothing but gossip merchants. Behar had clearly reached her limit. Get him out of here now, she shouted to security. I don't care what his problem is. I don't care what he thinks we've done wrong. I want him off my set immediately. As security approached, Hardy's demeanor shifted again, becoming almost predatory. Your set? Your set, Joy? This isn't your set. This is ABC's set, and last time I checked, ABC answers to Disney, and Disney answers to shareholders. And shareholders don't like hosts who can't control their guests. The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable, and it had the desired effect. Behar's face went pale. And for the first time since the confrontation began, she seemed genuinely unsettled. Are you threatening me? She asked, her voice much quieter now. Hardy's smile was cold and predatory. I'm not threatening anyone, Joy. I'm just stating facts. Facts about how the television industry works, facts about how quickly things can change, facts about how careers can end. Goldberg stood up abruptly, her own anger finally surfacing. Okay, that's enough. You don't get to come onto our show and threaten our jobs. You don't get to attack our integrity and then imply that you're going to use your Hollywood connections to hurt us professionally. Hollywood connections? Hardy laughed, but it was a harsh, unpleasant sound. Whoopee. I don't need Hollywood connections to hurt you professionally. You're doing that all by yourselves every single day. I'm just pointing it out. The security team was now directly behind Hardy, but they seemed hesitant to physically intervene with such a high-profile guest. The situation was unprecedented, and everyone was unsure about the proper protocol. Behar found her voice again, and when she spoke, it was with a fury that matched Hardy's own. You know what, Tom? You're absolutely right about one thing. This confrontation is going to end careers, but it's not going to end mine. When this footage hits the internet, when people see how you've behaved today, your reputation is going to be destroyed. My reputation? Hardy's laugh was genuinely amused now. Joy. My reputation is built on playing unstable characters. If anything, this is just method acting taken to its logical conclusion. But your reputation, Your reputation is built on being a professional television host. And professional television hosts don't lose control of their shows. The observation hit its mark, and Behar's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I haven't lost control of anything. You're the one who came in here acting like a madman. You're the one who turned a simple interview into a circus. A circus? Hardy seized on the word with glee. That's perfect, Joy, because that's exactly what this show is, a circus. And you're the ringmaster, cracking your whip at the performers, making them dance for the crowd's entertainment. Sarah Haynes made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Tom, whatever issues you have with daytime television, whatever problems you think exist in the industry, this isn't the way to address them. You're accomplishing nothing except making yourself look bad. Hardy turned to face her with an expression of mock sympathy. Sarah, I appreciate that you're trying to be the voice of reason here, but you're missing the point entirely. I'm not trying to accomplish anything except showing people what you really are when the cameras are rolling and someone doesn't play by your rules. The cameras are always rolling, Goldberg pointed out. That's the whole point of live television. Everything you're doing right now is being broadcast to millions of people. Exactly, Hardy said with satisfaction. Millions of people are seeing what happens when someone finally stands up to the bullies of daytime television. Millions of people are witnessing what you're really like when you can't control the narrative. Behar's final response was delivered with icy precision. What millions of people are witnessing, Tom, is a successful actor having a complete breakdown on live television. They're seeing someone destroy his own career for no apparent reason. They're watching a man embarrass himself, his family, and everyone associated with him. The words seemed to hit Hardy harder than anything else that had been said during the entire confrontation. For a moment, his mask of controlled rage slipped, and something more vulnerable showed through. But the moment passed quickly, and Hardy's response was swift and vicious. At least I have the courage to show who I really am, Joy. At least I'm not hiding behind some fake persona, pretending to be America's sweetheart while I'm actually a vindictive, manipulative user. That's it, Behar said flatly. Security, remove him. Now. I don't care if you have to drag him out. I want him gone. As the security team finally moved to escort Hardy from the set, he delivered his parting shot with theatrical flair. This isn't over, Joy. This is just the beginning. You've made an enemy today, and I'm not the kind of enemy you want to have. The threat hung in the air as Hardy was led away, leaving the hosts, the studio audience, and millions of viewers at home stunned by what they had just witnessed. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Hardy's footsteps echoing through the studio as he was escorted toward the exit. Behar sat back down heavily in her chair, visibly shaken by the encounter. The other hosts looked equally rattled, unsure how to proceed with the remainder of their show after such an explosive confrontation. What started as a routine celebrity interview had become something entirely different, a raw display of anger and hostility that would be talked about for years to come. The footage would be replayed countless times, analyzed by media experts, and discussed in industry circles as an example of what can happen when the carefully constructed facade of television professionalism completely breaks down. And that's the incredible story of how Tom Hardy completely lost control during what should have been a simple promotional appearance on The View. The fallout from this confrontation was immediate and severe, with industry insiders calling it one of the most shocking celebrity meltdowns ever captured on live television. What do you think really triggered Hardy's explosive behavior? Was it just a bad day? Or was there something deeper going on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from Hollywood's most shocking moments.